Day 14. Okay, so I am running into all sorts of OBS issues. Hopefully this turns out okay. I'm constantly getting encoding overloaded errors. No idea what's going on, but my CPU is just not having it. So hopefully this is okay, but if not, it is what it is. Sorry. I want to start with one more thing about the Google Play console and getting it on your device, and then we will talk about Crashlytics again and actually test that. So on the Google Play console, there is this section for testers, and then if you click copy link right here, testers can join on the web, and then paste this link in your browser. You will come to this screen. You can send this to people. They can join like so. And then once they enter the program, which I've already done on this user, they can click this link to install a public version from Google Play, which will take you here, and then they can click install and install it. So this is what it looks like when you don't have anything else on your store page. So we'll fill this out in another episode, but for now, this is a way that people can install and test your device, or you can install and test on your device. Okay, so we want to talk about Crashlytics a little bit some more. So I've got the app up and running. Life is neither good or evil, but only a place for good and evil. That's excellent. So we're going to talk about Crashlytics today, and then we're going to fix a bug because I found one while I was testing, which is kind of fun. So, okay, Crashlytics. We have set this up in a previous episode, but we haven't tested it anywhere. So we can do a couple different things. Basically, we can see Flutter error on error, Crashlytics, platform dispatcher instance on error. We basically want to trigger a crash, or we can, I think we can just throw an error. So let's throw error in set state. Is there like unimplemented error? Yeah, throw unimplemented error. Okay, so we'll throw this in our set state. If we do a hot reload, or we do a full reload, sorry, not a hot reload, a hot restart, I guess, it will cause this to reinitialize its state, pause on exception, throw that exception. Okay, still have some more stuff going on with the framework, with exceptions occurring. Bada bing. Okay, there we go. Unimplemented error. That should work. So we'll give that a second to flush. And by that I mean like the errors get collected and then they get flushed to Firebase. They get written out to Firebase kind of in bulk. So we'll give that a second and then we'll see if we can get a Crashlytics error for our application. So that didn't happen on Android, so we're probably pretty good there. So it's in one of these iOS's, it should be. I don't remember which one we have set up for which. I'll need to go in and remove the duplicate one. com.pyrestudios.philosopherstone. Okay, so that should be the one. So we can give this a minute and make sure. That's not good. Separate project. And then make sure that our Crashlytics error gets reported. Refreshing this one more time, and if not, we'll try to trigger an error another way. Okay, still seeing the screen, which is fine. Let's pull up the Flutter Fire Crashlytics docs. Sure. Okay, oh yeah, I forgot. Sorry, since Flutterfire got absorbed into the Firebase core implementation, we can just go to Firebase's site instead of Flutterfire site. If this page loads today. Okay, get started with Firebase Crashlytics Flutter. Yep. Force a test crash to finish setup. So if you've added an error handler that calls Firebase Crashlytics instance record error to the top level zone, you can use the following. Text button. Okay, open your app from the test device or emulator, press the test exception, go to the Crashlytics dashboard. In theory, we should be seeing ours with the same error type, so I'm just going to refresh this one more time, and then if not, we'll simulate another error. Okay, still not seeing it. So let's throw an exception. So if I go back to my quote view, quote view, and we throw an exception, we'll try this. Do a full restart. Exception has occurred. Okay. Okay. Let this finish. Okay, we see exception. That's not super helpful, but that's fine. Now let's go back to Crashlytics. Give this a refresh. We might have to wait a minute or two again. Interesting. Oh, okay. I was on the wrong one. So you can see the app has one unprocessed crash. You can upload a DSIM file to process them. Maybe we'll get to this. This might be out of the scope of what we're doing. They're kind of a pain because you have to manage DSIM files for every version. It's kind of a lot. But we should be able to see our crashes here, and then we can see trends by like how many users are crashing, and similar issues. I don't know why this isn't showing up yet. No data, last 7 days, last 60 minutes. Okay. Chart for 60 minutes and 24 hours is not available. Okay, maybe that's part of the issue. But you can see like the crashes will show up here. You'll see error messages down here that you can click into and learn a little bit more about what has happened while that crash was taking place on the user's device. Interesting. And the URL is not changing between those two, so it's a topic for me to sort out on my own, I guess. But yeah, so in time, these will process and we'll be able to actually see the crash reports. Okay. So we are sending data to Crashlytics, which is good. Let's do a fix for that bug that I mentioned. So I didn't run into this too much until I was using the app on my physical device, and I pulled up a day and I got a quote, and then I went to the next day and I pulled the app up again and it was the same quote. And the reason why is that this init state didn't get called again because the state was already initialized. It was still hanging out in my phone's memory. So what we can do to solve that is we can pull up the Flutter stateful widget lifecycle. We talked about this in a previous episode as well, but we can pull this up and reference it to figure out what we can do to recycle our state whenever the user comes back to our application. So we know init state is the first time we need to initialize that state. Did change dependencies. It's called immediately after init state on the first time the widget's built. Whenever an object that this widget depends on data from is called, for example, if it relies on an inherited widget, build is always called after did change dependencies, so this is rarely needed. Okay. Did update widget is called if the parent widget changes and has time, and it has to rebuild this widget because it needs to give it different data. Okay. Deactivate, this is rarely used. Okay, I'm actually not sure what lifecycle method we want So Flutter stateful widget back from background. Let's try that. So we want to do like a rebuild on foreground. I think we want to do a widget binding observer, but it's been a little while. Set state, yeah, not what I want. Flutter widget binding observer. Monitor the lifecycle of app using the widget's binding observer class. Okay, let's take a look at that. Stateful widget with widget binding observer. And that gives did change app lifecycle state. I guess that's it. Did change text scale, did have memory problem, did pop route. Called when the system puts the app in the background or returns the app to the foreground. Okay, that's exactly what we want. So we can come back to our state and use our first mixin. Oops, I don't need with twice. So with is a keyword to say that you're going to use a mixin. So we have this widget's binding observer mixin, and then we want this method. So I'm going to copy this from here. If you are not following along in the browser, just go ahead and type this out. And instead of calling set state, what we want to do is we want to say quote view model dot load quotes. And this should resolve our issue. This will trigger another reload of the quotes, which will ultimately call another state change, which will ultimately make this stream builder rebuild. Okay, so that should solve that issue. So we're always getting the most recent or the least recent. I think what we're going to do next is we will implement a scroll, or not a scroll, but a swipe to go back a date, or swipe to go forward a date. And there will be some fun constraints on that too, like you can't go into the future because why not? But you can go back. So that swipe, we'll need to figure out how we're going to handle that. And we have a couple different options. We can literally swipe and just replace it, which is probably the easiest, or we could use a widget from the Flutter widget catalog, like a page view. Oh man, I need to disable uBlock whenever I'm doing videos. So if we go to material components and we go to, let's find it. List tile navigation, selection, switch, text inputs. Interesting. I don't see the page view option. I might be confusing that for the page view that Android has, but I don't think so. So let me see what else we can find. Animation and motion, animated builder, animated widget, heroes, scale transition, slide transition, not that one. Oh, interaction models maybe. Absorb pointer, drag target, draggable, routing, hero, navigator. No, still not what I'm looking for. Constrained box, expanded, off stage. I'm not sure what the flow layout algorithm is. That seems new. Row, stack, table, slivers. Oh, that's a topic for another time. Painting effects, scrolling, styling. I know there's something, right? Flutter, page view. Did I somehow not? 3 pages would scroll horizontally. Yeah, I guess I somehow did not stumble upon this, which is kind of interesting. So we'll run this example and you can see that there is a, maybe. Oh, okay, computer, please. Interesting. I don't know why the scrolling is not working. So there's a page controller sets to horizontal by default. Interesting. I'm pretty sure that's what we want, but I can't seem to get the example online to work. Let's see. Okay, let's see this post right here. Medium paywall. I really just want like an example. Do you have a GIF or anything? Yeah, okay, so something like this is something we could look at with our page view. And then I think we could probably do this in a way where it kind of like recycles the previous page views, so it's virtualized. So we would only have like 3 or maybe 4 in this case. But yeah, so we can figure out how we want to handle that and I guess decide between the 2 options. So the simplest one would be using a gesture detector. And I guess we can go ahead and implement that now. So in the body here, I'm going to wrap this in a container. And then I'm going to change this container to a gesture detector. Okay, and then I want swipe on. What are my options? Horizontal drag end. Horizontal drag start, horizontal drag update. A pointer that is in contact with the screen with a primary button and moving horizontally has moved in the horizontal direction. Okay, so we could probably do something like this. Take the details. Oops. And then in our case, let's see what details has. Details dot. So we've got the delta. Okay, let's try this. So the delta is going to be the change, right? So this will be a positive or negative value, I imagine. The amount the pointer has moved in the coordinate space of the event receiver since the previous update. Okay. So if we do distance, be the magnitude of the offset. Okay, so direction, the angle of the offset, values from 0 to pi divided by 2 indicate previous values. Okay. Let's go with distance. So this gives us a value. It's a double. So I'll set this to final distance. And then what we want to do is maybe a little bit of business logic, or I guess it's not really business logic, but UI logic. So if distance, we probably want to do math dot absolute. Pull up the docs really quick because I don't remember how to do absolute power in Dart math absolute. It's just a method on the number. Okay. So if distance dot absolute is greater than, I don't know, let's say 100. This way we don't have like little tiny swipes don't do anything. They don't affect this at all. And then we can say if distance is less than 0, so in our case this would be swiping probably to the right. I'm not positive. We'll actually need to test this. So in our case, if we swipe to the left, and full disclosure, we're probably going to throw this away and use the page view anyways, but it would be good to kind of just think through this and see what a simpler solution could look like. And honestly, the page view might be simpler at this point. It's a little easier to work with. So in our case, we want to view model dot load quotes, else quote view model dot load quotes. We'll need to pass in the date here, so that's something we'll work with in just a moment. Stream has already been listened to. Okay. Restarting application. Okay, we're good. So what I want to do now is trigger that swipe, but I'm going to add some debuggers here. So we can add one here, hot reload. Okay, so we have some details. And we have a delta and a distance. Okay, this number is getting up there. So I'm going to move this debugger into if the distance is greater than 0. Sorry, greater than 100 is what I meant. Interesting. I'm curious if this is too high. So what if we set it to something like 40? There was one that triggered. The distance was 75. So in our case, it'll trigger the load quotes. Distance is 83. It'll trigger load quotes. So that's something we need to worry about too, is making sure we're not calling this too much. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and undo this. And we will do a page view. Maybe that's what we'll start with tomorrow. But before we get to that point tomorrow, I want to do one more thing, which is, okay, we've removed, I guess I could have just removed the gesture detector, but we've undid all of those changes. We've undone all those changes. And now we need to do a hot restart again, I guess, because the stream's already been listened to. And then, okay, I can remove that debugger since we don't need it. So now we need to update our view model, right? So we have our quote view model, and it's, this load quotes doesn't take in a DateTime, it just uses DateTime now. So if we pass in a date and we say it's of type DateTime, and that's TypeScript syntax, not Dart syntax. There we go. And then we can, instead of saying DateTime.now, we can take in date. Does this need it? No, it does not. Does anything else? Yes, this needs a DateTime. So if we submit an entry, we also need to submit a date to submit it for. So we say DateTime date. This becomes date. And then load quotes gets date assigned to it right here. Now we need to go back to our quote view and pass in that date. So what we will do is we will take in a date in our quote, not our quote view. How do we want to handle this? One positional argument expected. Okay. I guess for now, let's just type new date right here. And this is a date time, so it'd be new date time. And it would actually be datetime.now. And we don't need the new keyword. Let's store this in a property. Okay, and now we need to make sure that this uses that date as well. And then down here, we need to pass in that date as well. Okay, we've refactored our view model to take in the date, which is going to set us up to actually set up that page view with multiple date objects with different streams and kind of go from there. So we are at time and my computer is still struggling. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap it up for the day there, and we will pick up tomorrow and try to get that page view working with multiple dates so you can swipe between them. And we'll figure out kind of what that looks like and explore that. I'm not 100% sure, but we can figure it out together and it should turn out just fine. I think that's it. If you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel, click the bell to make sure that you get notified of new videos whenever they come out. And then how's your app coming? Are you doing the same thing that I'm doing? Adding new stuff, changing things? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks. Have a great weekend.